Hello, my name is Ash, a counselor in training. This is my Relatable study podcast for individuals who need help studying for their NCE, CPCE, and other related counseling exams. I'm going to go through many questions from multiple resources and make the answers relatable to both you and me. So get your listening ears on and let's get studying. Heredity. A. Assumes the normal person has 23 pairs of chromosomes. B. Assumes that heredity characteristics are transmitted by chromosomes. C. Assumes genes composed of DNA hold a genetic code. D. All of the above. The answer is D, all of the above. Heredity is the biological inheritance of chromosomes and DNA, and it is passing on these traits from parent to child through reproductive means. Though some creatures, fun fact, can do it asexually, like starfish. But in the human sense, heredity assumes the normal person has 23 pairs of chromosomes, assumes that heredity characteristics are transmitted by chromosomes, and genes composed of DNA hold a genetic code. That is what heredity assumes. The code of ethics is A. Legal and binding. B. A hard and fast set of rules. C. A set of standards of best practice. D. All of the above. The answer is C. The Code of Ethics is a set of standards of best practice. When I first ran into this question, I believed that the Code of Ethics was legal and binding and a hard and fast set of rules, but that is incorrect because if you bring the Code of Ethics into the courthouse, it is not legal and it is not binding, nor is it a hard and fast set of rules to follow because it is setting standards of what you could do in your practice that is for the best. For example, take the ethical code, receiving gifts. Thank you cards may be acceptable for some counselors as a way of the client saying, thank you for your service, here's a thank you card. Whereas if clients offer, let's say, a car or a game console, that would cross some boundaries and we have to refer back to the ACA Code of Ethics of receiving gifts to see what we can do when it comes to accepting items of monetary value. And in this regards, the Code of Ethics sets the standard best practice when dealing with unique situations such as receiving gifts. Paget's final stage is known as the formal operational stage. In this stage, A. Abstract thinking emerges. B. Problems can be solved using detection. C. A and B. D. The child has mastered abstract thinking but still feels helpless. The answer is A and B. Paget's final stage is known as the formal operational stage. In this stage, abstract thinking emerges and problems can be solved using deduction. In this period, individuals can operate on the forms or representations that allow them to think and reason within a wider perspective, and what if questions are arising, and individuals can solve these what if problems and other problems through abstract conceptions and using hypothetical and deductive reasoning. For example, during the formal operational stages, it revolves around the adolescent age, and in that age they use hypothetical testing, like if-then statements, to think, if this happens to me, then what would happen? If this happens to them, then this would happen. And they have abstract discussions on ideas such as identity or more freedom. These are a few examples of the formal operational stages. During a counseling session, a client reveals that they often feel guilty and responsible for their parents' happiness, believing that they must always prioritize their parents' needs over their own. The counselor recognizes this as a possible case of introjection. Which of the following best describes the concept of introjection in this context? A. The client is displacing their own feelings onto their parents. B. The client is regressing to behaviors of an early developmental stage. C. The client has internalized their parents' values and beliefs as their own. D. The client is projecting their feelings onto an external object or person. The answer is C. The client has internalized their parents' values and beliefs as their own. This has resulted in the client feeling guilty and responsible for their parents' happiness and prioritize their parents' needs over their own. The parents had a way of living that was so ingrained that the client has internalized that way of living, the values and their beliefs, and they cannot break away to figure out what they need and what their values and beliefs are. With the help of the counselor, they can work through this interjection to figure out what the client's needs, values, and beliefs are, and to break away from their parents and reduce the feeling of guilt and responsibility of making their parents happy and prioritize their own needs. A counselor who has a current caseload of 124 clients decides to close his practice and move to Florida. Unethical handling of this change includes A. Notifying all of his clients in writing of his plans. B. Making referrals to other professionals for all of his clients. C. Safeguarding all the clients' records. D. Calling patients to notify them of this change. The unethical handling of this change includes calling the patients to notify them of this change. Simply calling patients, letting them know that you are moving down to Florida, doesn't make the situation ethical, because you have to notify your clients in writing of future plans such as moving, helping make referrals to other professionals for his clients so he is not abandoning them, and safeguard all the client records via flash drive, paper files, any other way you can make sure that the client records are safeguarded. In these three ways, you're doing the ethical care of how to handle the situation, whereas simply calling the patients to notify them of the change is unethical because it may be too sudden, they may not have another therapist to go to, and it would be client abandonment. That is all 5 questions. Thank you for listening. Keep calm and study on.